Hello. Thank you guys for tuning in. Welcome to the Counselors Complex podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Lattin, licensed professional counselor and owner of JL Counseling. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to give it a few minutes and let some more people join us. And I'm super excited about our episode tonight because this is my season finale, the end of season 3. So I'll be coming back in the fall. But I wanted to end my season talking about mental health as it relates to men, because I know most of my listeners are women, but I really wanted to reach the men as far as mental health goes. So I have 3 great men on here today that will be sharing their experiences about mental health and with their professions and just life in general. And we'll be talking about things as far as mental health related to men. So please like, share, comment, subscribe on all of the platforms. You can find me on Facebook at JL Counseling LLC, on Instagram at JL Counseling LLC, and also on YouTube. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, JL Counseling. So please like and share. And we will bring on our guests in a few minutes. I'm going to give it till 8:05 for us to get started. Thank you for tuning in. I'm so excited about this episode. I love when I have guests on. It just makes it so much better, I think. Do you guys like when I have guests? If you like when I have guests on, please comment below and tell me who else you would like for me to bring on in future episodes, because I'll definitely be looking for some more content in the fall. Thank you for tuning in. Hello. Please like and share. Comment where you're watching from. If you're in Shreveport, if you're in Texas, if you're anywhere, let us know where you're listening from. And don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share. We'll give about 2 more minutes, and then I'll go ahead and introduce our guests. Welcome. Like and share. My daughter is so funny, y'all. So she's 4, and they watch my podcast downstairs. And so my daughter one day was like, I saw you on TV and you were like, hello, like and share. So it was really, really funny. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Do all the things. Today we're going to be talking about mental health as it relates to men and their experiences with mental health. So we have a few guests on talking about that. So I'm super excited about the questions. If you guys have any questions while you're listening, please feel free to comment them. All right, so it's 8:05. I'm going to go ahead and start introducing our guests. So for those of you who are just now tuning in, welcome to the Counselors Complex podcast. And today we are going to be talking about mental health as it relates to men. So I'm going to introduce tonight's guests. So my first guest is Stephen Knight. Stephen is a young professional and personality from Shreveport, Louisiana. His enthusiasm for people, places, and sometimes things have led him to wonderful experiences that have shaped who he is today. He owns and operates Nightlife Creative, LLC, which is a marketing and consulting firm endeavoring to bring out the best in every artist or business. And he's really good too, y'all. Okay. In his non-working hours, he serves as the president of People Acting for Change and Equality, which is a 501c3 LGBTQ plus focused nonprofit committed to advocating for equality and justice in North Louisiana. Stephen is also the co-founder of Shreve Pride, a local queer and ally-led organization committed to developing accessible programming for all people to live and play safely as themselves. So let's welcome Stephen Knight. Hi, Stephen.
Woo! You did such a good job introducing. You're so good at this. Oh my
Thank
gosh.
you. Thank you. And thank you for agreeing to come on here. You know, I love you. You're so
Oh,
sweet.
thank
So
you.
I'm really excited to hear your input on this topic.
No, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to chat with you and the other guests as well.
Yes, yes. So I'm going to introduce our next guest, Josh Pickens. He's 27 and is a registered nurse, recording artist, and producer from Los Angeles, California. He uses his profession as a ministry to heal minds and bodies, and he uses music to tell stories of love, loss, depression, addiction, and empowerment. He strives to be living proof that you can conquer your demons and live a life worth living. So I want to bring on Josh Pickens. Hi, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, you guys?
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you about like your music and everything. I think that's going to be a really cool aspect, a part of this show. So thank you for joining me. Okay, and our last guest, but certainly not least, is kind of our expert panelist. He's actually in the mental health field. So James Ross is a native from Shreveport, Louisiana. James Ross attended University of Louisiana at Monroe, ULM, for undergraduate education. James completed graduate school at Grambling State University and received a master's of social work. Upon receiving the MSW degree, James began working in mental health as a mental health professional. James matriculated in mental health by becoming a licensed clinical social worker and board-approved clinical supervisor. James has provided supervision and mentored many social workers pursuing MSW degree and licensure. James has completed the following certifications. He's certified a certified advanced social worker case manager, motivational interviewing, master's addictions counselor, and trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy. While working as a psychotherapist in private practice, James has provided therapy with many adolescents, youth, and adults. James' area of expertise is trauma, substance abuse, depression, and complicated grief. James has over 15 years of mental health experience. His treatment approach is cognitive behavioral therapy, motivational interviewing, strengths perspective, and whole health. James provides individual, family, and couples therapy. In addition to being a therapist, he's also a volunteer coach in youth basketball and baseball. That's awesome. James also serves as a mentor, husband, and father. So let's bring on James Ross. Hi, James.
Hello, how's everyone?
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So I'm so excited to have all of you guys. So let's just jump right on in. For those of you who are just tuning in, this is the Counselors Complex podcast, and today's topic is mental health. So we are talking about everything mental health related according to the bird's eye view of a man. Okay, so we have three guys on here that are going to help me get better perspective as well, and so that I can share the wealth with all of you. So let's go ahead and get started. And this question is actually for all of you. So the first question is, when did you first learn about or become aware of mental health, and what does it mean to you in this season of your life? So if anybody wants to go first, you could just jump right in, or I could just call you out.
I'll go first. So, I think the first time I was really aware of mental health, maybe when I was the youngest, right? Specifically dealing with folks who are struggling with like addiction, right? Because I think a lot of people don't think about addicts at struggling with some sort of mental health. And, I think it's a common occurrence in a lot of like African-American neighborhoods to have somebody who is struggling with substance abuse, and for the community at large to either look at them like a nuisance or, oh, poor them, right? But I don't think we often think about finding those people the help that they need or lending resources to them before it gets bad and they, lose their lives or elsewise, right? Substance abuse is nothing to play with. And I often feel that like sometimes it's just about a person knowing that they have somewhere to go to because they had to make the decision to get the help. And that is as helpful as them being in a therapist chair, is having resources. And what does it mean to me in the season of my life? So much, right? I'm very open about my own struggle with mental health. And I think that is so important to be doing for other young Black people, especially. I think we're, at least for my age group, right? I'm 27, that we are healing a lot from like a lack of advocacy for mental health. In that, when I was younger, you only went to go see a doctor or a practitioner if you were crazy. And that wasn't something that we were encouraged to do. But I know that is deeply rooted in historical trauma, not seeking, help from professionals, because often we were experimented on and things of that nature. But we're healing from that trauma. And I just appreciate spaces like this.
Thank you for that. I think that is so right, like about the substance abuse. Like all of us has either their one family member or multiple family members that struggle in that area too, and we kind of either make light of it or we're just maybe embarrassed by it, but we never really truly get that person help. I know like in my family, there's several people that have had, either alcoholism or, substance abuse. And I never heard of any of them, or any of our family really trying to get them like into a rehab or anything like that. And it's just kind of, oh, that's just so-and-so. Like they just gonna do what they do, and we just kind of, we're so immune to it. I can definitely see how that is like usually our first. It's usually a family member that we're just like, and people are like, oh, don't mind Uncle so-and-so. He's just, that's just him. We just gonna just stay away from him, So yeah. Anybody else wanna go next?
I'll go ahead. No, go ahead, brother.
You sure?
Yes, sir.
Well, I appreciate your response. Like, for me, I first became aware of mental health like I was about 12 years old. As sad as it is, man, I had a friend, my best friend in the world as a kid. We were playing with his dad was a cop. We were playing with his gun. And so he pretty much killed himself on accident. But, we're like right in front of each other, So I didn't really know exactly what mental health and all that actually meant. But I know that as a kid, from that point, I was kind of like changed, So the older I got, like, like I said, I'm 27 now, and I'm fully aware of my feelings and what they mean. But I can't say, like, as far as developing as a young person, my family was just kind of like, I didn't exactly know what was going on or what I felt and all of those things. So my family was just kind of like, oh, just pray about it, man. Or, oh, you'll be all right, or things like that. It really wasn't taken seriously to the point that, hey, this is a traumatic experience and this could affect a person this way or that way. And, my family are old military people. Both my parents are almost 70, real old school. You don't talk about stuff like that. You kind of do what you got to do and you get past it. But I can say mental health for me and like this season of my life is just like peace within self. Regardless of expectations and whatever the world wants for me, as long as I got peace within myself, I got faith in God, everything kind of progresses and moves more smoothly in my life, because I used to worry about everything somebody said or everything somebody thought or everything little thing. So that's what that means for me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Like, that's really, wow. I couldn't imagine at 12, that's like your first, I mean, that's wow. But I'm really glad that you have come to this point now at 27 to where like you're just more aware and you realize like the impact that it did have on you. But obviously it seems like that you've done the work to like work through that. Even though maybe your family didn't necessarily see the importance of like getting you that help early on. So thank you for sharing that. We appreciate that.
So, thank you all for having me, and great responses to everyone, and great reflections also, Mrs. Ladden. Um, so the first when I first learned about mental health was when I was, I say, a young, early adolescent, 11, 12, 13 years old. Um, I had family members that had mental health issues, and I used to hear family members saying, "Hey, bipolar, bipolar." That's all I heard is bipolar. I'm like, what is bipolar? So as I got older, I started researching bipolar, and and I and the symptoms of bipolar. My particular family members were exhibiting those symptoms of being manic, and when you go being manic, you just do just a lot of reckless and irresponsible things, and I just thought it was normal. To just do crazy things because, you know, where I grew up, in the community that I grew up in, you experience a lot of crazy things, whether it's be trauma, mental health, uh, like you said earlier, substance abuse and mental health coincide with each other. So, you grew up in a poverty stricken, substance abuse ridden community. You just see all these people tripping off the substances, and you're like, okay, well, they just tripping or they're crazy. But it was substance abuse and substance induced, mental health issues, and family members. And what does it mean to you in this season of your life? What does it mean to me? Since the pandemic onset, a lot of people have, experienced a lot of traumatic grief or complicated grief, from loss of loved ones, from the COVID-19 or other comorbidities. And then also a lot of people, a lot of depression. So in this season of my life, I have a lot of peers and friends and that have suffered from depression and just anxiety from the unknown, um, and where we're going in this society, in this world, in this community. So I'm just want to be a vessel and a gatekeeper to help people overcome those anxiety provoking issues or situation, and try to help people cope with their depression and stuff like that, because we all are just one one minute from being a diagnosed person.
Right. There's not much that separates us. It's just one little incident can just change the course of your life and your mental health. So we all have to really, I mean, it's a lifestyle. Like we definitely have to do what we need to do on a daily basis and not just, every now and then or when we catch a vacation, maybe every blue moon. Like it's something that you literally have to work hard at every day to keep from going down that path of whether it's substance abuse or depression and suicidality or anxiety or, having these relationships filled with conflict. So, and when you said bipolar, like it's funny, but it's not funny because that is the most misused diagnosis. I mean, I hear so many people saying, "Oh, so and so, she bipolar,"
Mm-hmm.
and it's like,
Yes.
or you'll hear people say, "Oh, I'm bipolar," and it's like, do you really know what that means, or are you just saying because they say, "Oh, I get mad all the time," or "I just blow up"? Well, that's only a piece of it. That's not its entirety. And then, we totally forget about or just kind of minimize the other factors that may contribute to why somebody may blow up. it might be related to trauma or whatever. So, yeah, that is probably one of the most misused diagnoses ever. You hear a lot of people describing themselves that way or their family that way, and it kind of gives it a negative connotation, and also it keeps people from getting the help that they actually need, like the real help that they need. So thank you for that.
You're
So
welcome.
thank you to those who are just now tuning in. We're talking about mental health as it relates to men. So this next one I have is for Josh. So let's see. What are some ways? Where did I don't think I put it on here. Okay, so Josh, hold on. Let me type it in here real quick. So Josh, what are some of your coping tools or ways you manage your mental wellness?
Some tools that I use like on a day to day, I kind of have to be real with myself and say, okay, I feel this way, and I try to. I think about everything I can control immediately, and then everything that's in the distance, I try to leave that alone. If it's something I can address, then I get to it. Anything else, I just let time pass or whatever it is. But the main thing is just I make sure I go outside every day. Get sun. Some people get real passive and they get real comfortable with like their feeling the way they feel because this is who I am. You know,
Mhm.
so I just try to be as positive and give myself good like material. I read from certain authors on the internet, or if I'm feeling a certain emotion or a certain way, I might read a book about like grief or anxiety or something like that. I feel like as long as you're trying to just not be content with like what you feel, you can always change your emotions or change who you are. I think everything is kind of like I don't want to say muscle memory, but people with routines.
Mhm.
So if you rethink how you speak and train yourself to be different, it's like a different way for me to like look at life, because I think life is just perspective. You know.
Definitely.
So
Yeah. And I love what you said about like focusing on what you can control, because I think I probably tell my clients that probably 1,000 times a week. It's like, what can you do about this in this moment? Is this something that you can control, or is this outside of your control? Like, and then when you realize that it's not in your control, well, how long do you want to dwell on this? How long do you want to carry this around with you? Because we all can make the decision to either hold on to things and carry that weight, or we can choose to let it go. We don't have to hold on to that stuff if we don't want to. And I know that it's easier said than done, but like you said, like doing these little things to try to see like what works for you. And, one particular thing, like going outside may work for some things, and maybe exercise might work for something else, or talking to somebody may work for something else. So you probably will have to like play around with it and see, what works best for this problem. And not just kind of get stuck in that rut like a lot of people do. And it's just kind of hard for them to come up out of that. So thank you so much. Did anybody want to add to that or respond to that?
Yes. So, Josh, when you said just going out there and getting some sun, just that vitamin D from that sun, it releases that serotonin, that good feeling in your brain, and that's something I always do. I go outside, get some sun, and just get that vitamin D, and it makes you feel good. Just like this evening, I went out, got some of that good sun. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think most men like to go outside. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most men like to do outdoor activities. I know my dad loves to do like yard work and stuff outside. And that's also a form of like just being active and exercise, because I think we can get so caught up in watching TV, playing the video game. That's a whole other conversation, right? But and that's not bad. It's not all the way bad, but sometimes we can have too much of one thing. So yeah, like getting out there in the sun is so good. And I'm glad, James, that you touched on that, because that's another factor that a lot of people don't think about, is just like, have you been outside today? And I think they said even like if it's overcast, if you just spend like 30 minutes outside, it makes a huge difference in your overall mood and like your ability to sleep at night too. So even if it's overcast, so I thought that was pretty cool when I learned that as well. Stephen, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll be brief. Ways I manage my mental health or wellness. I do and I don't, right? I'm a person who does not necessarily like regimen, and I feel like mental health is like a pick your own path, put together what works for you sort of thing. And as a person who constantly works through like perfectionist tendencies or being like my own worst critic, especially when it comes to like work that I'm doing personally or out in the community, I've had to learn to give into my own like simple pleasures, if that makes sense. So even when I'm like in the middle of the work day, right? Something that I found out, or that I saw that was so helpful to me, right, is instead of denying yourself the things that you want, like a snack, or watching that 3-minute video you really want and you can't stop thinking about it, or maybe you want to go and watch a documentary. While it certainly is like it is a privilege for me as a freelancer to be able to do that, I really do encourage everyone, no matter what kind of job you have, to like revel in those simple pleasures and to just give in to them, right? Because your work is so much more productive when you really lean into giving yourself that ability to just like release, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop what I'm doing, because it's better to just do the thing than like tease myself with doing the thing. And then I'm like split brain and distracted here, right? So whether that is going outside for a walk, because I'm the person who checks the mailbox 5 times a day, even after I got the mail, but there's something about like that physical motion of going outside. It's familiar. I don't have to think about it. It's like, okay, well, there's sun here and I've gotten to experience it a little bit. Now I'm going back inside and I can sit for like another 30 minutes to an hour and just do some work. So I think it's less about managing it and more about giving myself more permission to revel in the unpredictability of the way that my mind works and my distractions. And that has personally helped me.
I like that. I think that especially for people that are like hard workers and, like you said, like perfectionists, or like they always have to be doing something and they don't give themselves a break to just like enjoy themselves or to do nothing. Like you don't always have to be going 100 miles per hour. And I think that is definitely like something that I've seen with a lot of men. And I don't counsel a lot of men in my practice. I have a lot of men that participate in couples therapy, but even in that, like a lot of them, it's all about work, and they very rarely have any really good coping skills, or they very rarely do anything for themselves that they enjoy, because it's all about working and providing for their family, and then they're like kind of miserable because that's all that's going through their head is work and provide and pay bills, and gosh, like that's just not a healthy way to live. So, Stephen, just to continue on with you into our next question. So how does one navigate the intersectionality of race, gender, sexuality, and their mental health to be healthy, happy, and whole?
Thank you for such a wonderful and complex question, right? So I think that because so many people are still navigating what the intersections of all of those things can mean with ever expanding definitions, right? We see a lot of dissonance between like communities, right? Even between like age variances and, people who are on that sliding scale of any of those identities, trying to just cope with who they are and then who they aren't, right? Which I find a lot of people are more reactive to who they aren't. And because they aren't that way, other people should be less like the thing that they're not like, right? But I find it's more freeing when you concern yourself less with like what you are not, and focusing more on like what you experience yourself to be, who you are, who you were born as. And for myself personally, it's been a long journey. Even now, I'm still like toying with expressions of gender and sexuality and all those things. But I think I had to, in some sense, separate myself from maybe more like traditionalist views and allow myself to just experience myself hopefully through my community, through people who are coming up after me, young folks, right? Through my own family members, and then trying to understand who they are and how that, as a totality built me as a person. So when I think about navigating those spaces, it really had to be a conversation of, okay, well, you don't feel good or the most like yourself when you do this, right? But you do feel good when you paint your nails or when you wear an earring, right? It's about building confidence and then just like allowing other people to flourish in their truths. And that is so much more freeing than being restrictive and trying to tell people what they can or cannot be, right? I'm a big experimentalist in the sense that personally, when I'm going through something, I tend to plan. I tend to create events. And I'm like, if I'm going through it, other people must be going through it. Like I years ago, I planned a big speed dating event for people because I was like, I don't want to be alone on Valentine's Day. So I bet you hundreds of other people don't want to be alone. So I'm going to put on a speed dating event, and lo and behold, people didn't want to be alone. And the biggest people who were shyest to say that were men, right? People who are straight men. They were like, I don't want to tell, ladies that I'm alone. Like, what if I look lame, right? And I'm like, well, I think it shows a lot of guts to come here and to be vulnerable like this, right? So I guess I don't think a lot specifically about in terms of my own gender, race, and things like that, and more in terms of how can I create spaces for other people to experience and navigate that, and without judgment, because I tend to think, right, that when we remove a lot of those judgments, barriers, limitations, and really like restrictive mindsets, and just let people like be at play in a space that's safe for them to do so and to ask the questions, even if they don't understand everything, that typically you'll find more common ground, and people will really want to delve into that kind of stuff, right? So that, I guess that's how it's helped me is being a part of a community actively and sharing space with people, no matter who they are. Because at the end of the day, whether or not, I'm best friends with whoever, I just want people to know that like life could be easy and simple if you just like live in the joy of it, and less than like trying to box other people in, because it's too short. There's too much crazy stuff going on. And I'd rather put happiness and love out in the world than anything. So yes, advocacy and providing mutual support for people has been the best way I've learned about and navigated my own mental health. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. I love that. And I love that what you said about like separating yourself from like what you don't want to be and focus more so on who do you want to be. Like, and that's how we become self-aware and just like live in the moment instead of like constantly trying to fit in and be, like just fit into the box that people want us to be in. Like we're so much more than just, A, B, C, and D. Like we just like we're made up of a lot of things. And then also like having a support system and a community where you feel at home. And like when I would counsel like LGBTQ plus teens at the clinic I used to work at, a lot of them, they did not have that support at home. And so I'm out here like trying to find them some other support, because I know like how detrimental that can be to their mental health to not feel supported by the people they love the most. So I'm like, okay, well, family can look, like there's multiple avenues to have like a family or to have a support system. So, hey, let's look at this group or whatever, like PACE and some other local community groups that would help with like youth and that are going through that and would help with their families as well. So it is so important. And I like what you said, like if you are going through it, sometimes it helps to know, like, okay, I'm not the only one, and create, and the fact that you were so creative in thinking of like, okay, well, let's make this into an event. Like, I think that is so like proactive to just like, if I'm, and that's kind of how I am too. Like, if I am going through something, I try to like reach out to other people. That's how I got into like the perinatal mental health sector, because I was going through it. And me and my husband, like, we just didn't know what to do because we had never experienced that. And then we found out that a lot of our friends had gone through it, but they kept it to themselves. And so, like, as I started branching out and like having, discussions about that, you just kind of learn that you're not so alone. So.
And can I throw like two more thoughts into that? So on the first section, right, about creating spaces for support, specifically for men, and then sub under that, people who are like on the spectrum of LGBTQ plus, right? Mm-hmm. Like I truly believe everybody is on the spectrum, no matter like how open you are to whatever, right? But it's about one, giving like our men the permission to express when they are hurt or when they don't feel strong, or let's just say it, when they feel weak, right? Like, men should be allowed to not always lead, to sometimes feel weak, and to especially express that in spaces and to be accepted for it, right? Because I tend to see, right, among my male friends, right, that there are not always those spaces to comfortably navigate and share in like what they're feeling and how that impacts their mental health. And I think that could be especially true for minority men who are like given so many responsibilities, and are at that like crossroads of, like, these men aren't worth anything, but at the same time, like, provide everything. So it's like I understand the struggle for a lot of like my own, brothers and sisters out there, where like the expectations are so much higher because you're expected to feel less but do more, if that makes sense. And then when we think about our younger people first, there are things like pastry, pride, queerport, all that out here that wasn't here, 7-8 years ago for young people. And I truly believe that, we're still navigating a lot of resistance within minority communities to accepting that like queer people are a part of your communities, right? They're in your churches, they work at your businesses, they're in your family, they live in your neighborhoods, they're making your food, creating the culture that you mimic, creating your media, right? Like, we intake and consume all of that, but then are like, that's a white people thing. Queer people don't exist, and I saw that, the strongest with some of our movements when we talk about advocacy, right? So I just want to make sure to, open a space up for anybody who personally wants to reach out to me, whether they are, working with a youth or a community member or whatever, straight, gay, or whatever. I have spaces and I am open to working with anybody regarding mental health and opportunities, for recovery. So I just wanted to extend myself in that way. And thank you for, again, asking that question.
Thank you. Did James or Josh, did any of you want to add to anything?
Don't be scared. Please add.
Steve, you touched on it.
Yeah, you got every
part of it. Yeah.
Like Miss Angela Henderson says, I love Steven. And Starla Ross says, give space for vulnerability. That kind of leads me to the next question. Giving space for vulnerability. I know that in my practice, like I said, I don't see a lot of men individually. So James, this question is for you. Do you counsel a lot of men? And if so, what are some common issues men come to you about?
Okay. To be frankly, no. Many men do not seek counseling. Most men, they seek their counsel in the barbershop, at their friend playing dominoes, playing some type of board game or chess, or at the cigar bar, pool hall, etc. But do men get formal counseling? The percentage is very low. However, I have been receiving more inquiries over, the past year or so from men seeking some type of counseling or therapy. And unfortunate, oftentimes those men, when they're seeking those services, they are in that panic mode, as opposed to being proactive. They're being reactive to a situation. So I would encourage more men to seek counseling, just like you go do your checkup. You do your, as I know, when you're young, you go your annual, but I have to go biannually now with my age. So I would encourage others, check in with your mental health. Just seek therapy, just someone to talk to. And then also, I counsel men, and children and boys informally in the barbershop, because I've been a barber for over 20 years.
Okay.
And so informal counseling, it happens, but formal, it does not.
Right. So for the ones that, because like I know we do get, and I get the same thing. I get a lot of inquiries, but maybe out of like 10 inquiries, you might have maybe 3 or 4 people that actually schedule the appointment. And then after that, maybe 2 out of those 3 or 4 actually continue in therapy consistently. So there, and keeping in mind there is still so much of a stigma out there, especially with men. Like, I think a lot of people in general, but especially men, probably think that if you go to counseling, that means that you're crazy or there's something wrong with you. And they forget that, or maybe they just don't know and don't have the education and awareness to know that you don't have to come to counseling just because you have a diagnosis. Like, it doesn't mean you have a mental illness. I've had people come to me for if they were moving to another state and they just wanted help with that transition. Like that says nothing crazy. That's nothing crazy, right? So get it out of your head that there's something wrong with you if you go talk to somebody. Um, and James, like, I'm really glad that you said that, because at first I was like, well, maybe they're not coming to me because I'm a woman, but I see, that maybe they find that it's less like intimidating, probably, to like just talk to somebody casually in the barbershop or when y'all are just hanging out, instead of, like being in this clinic or being in this office and it's just like just me and you, and like I don't have anything else to distract me from my pain or what I'm going through. Do you think that that's kind of accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. And like I say, the men, to piggyback on when I say they're being reactive, most of the men that I provide counseling or therapy to, they're either court ordered or they are trying to seek counseling or therapy prior to some type of legal situation.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, if they would be proactive instead of being reactive, a lot of times they would not have to deal with those issues going through the court systems and legal issues also.
Right. Okay. Yeah, try to do that before you're court ordered to, because I even notice, like, people that are court ordered to do things or they're forced to do things, even if your wife is forcing you to come to therapy, it's not gonna work as well if you just kind of come beforehand on your own. But it's hard to get people to take that first step. So Angela Henderson has a question, actually. So we're gonna go off of our questions for a second. And So Josh, I'm gonna give this one to you. Do you think men see speaking to a therapist as a sign of weakness? And maybe speak from your own experience.
Before I was a nurse, I used to think so. Yeah, I used to be like, oh, I hate to say that, but it's just being around the people I was around. You know, the macho men I was around. Oh, you don't need to go to see that. Oh, you crazy if you go do this or do that. Um, I don't see it as a sign of weakness anymore. It's just you trying to get better. I always tell people like, you could do. I don't encourage it. I'm just saying like you could do drugs, you could do whatever you do to get away from it, but you can't get rid of self.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do anything to sedate yourself, but the things you have in your mind, no matter where you go, it's always gonna be there. So that's how I look at it. So anything that you can do to better yourself or to just, to get you in a more positive place, then do it. But I do know, like amongst my friends, I have told them like, oh man, I go see a therapist, or, oh man, what you doing that for? You straight, you all right? Or oh man, I see people in the hospital all the time who are like you said, like they'll talk to me in the hospital because once I develop some type of rapport with them and they know I'm cool and I ask them questions or they ask me, hey man, I feel like this, what should I do? And then I just give them my personal, professional opinion. And a lot of them, I know that they don't follow up and actually go see somebody because they're afraid to be stigmatized or they're afraid to tell their friends or family, hey, this is what I'm going through or whatever. And it makes you seem weak, especially amongst men, because a lot of men that I have experienced, as far as like my friends and family and stuff, they act like they have no problems. Everything's okay. But, they sexaholics, drink themselves to sleep at night. They gamble, do whatever to avoid addressing the actual problem that they have because the problem that they have is too much for them to accept. Or they don't know how to cope with their actual problems and what they've been through, or the reasons why. So.
Right. Do you think that when you share, like, do you ever share your experience? Like, hey, like, I've done this, and this, and I've overcame this. Like, do you feel like that, like you may encourage some people that are in your circle to go, or are they still kind of reluctant even with you saying it?
All the time, I try to be as transparent as possible. Before I used to be like, oh, I'm weak because I'm going through this. Because, I'm not going to lie. Like, because of what I have been through, I suffer from depression, like, very severely.
Mm-hmm.
Or, anxiety and things like that. So the older I got, I became more, I had to sit in the room by myself and say, okay, who am I? So when I get around people who are going through things, I just spoke to a friend a few hours ago about something she was going through. And she got upset at me because I was like, you're not being accountable for the fact that you have these issues.
Mm-hmm.
You say, oh, well, I can't go see nobody. Oh, I can't go to the doctor because I'm afraid of this. But you're not trying to address the problem,
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first step is just saying, I have this problem and I'm not lesser than anybody because I have it. Because, I used to look up and say, well, I used to ask friends and family, hey, man, do you think about stuff like this? Or is this a problem you have? And they'd be like, no. And then I'd be like, wow, I'm crazy or I'm lesser or things. And all these thoughts, they pile up. And then you eventually, get to a stagnant place in your life or your mind. And then a lot of men, they don't go seek treatment because, like you said, I'm worried about providing and worried about all of these other things. And it kind of takes precedence over self.
Right. And I like what you said. It's like you can do all these other things to try to avoid what's the real issue, but at the end of the day, like you can't get rid of self. Like you're gonna have to like face yourself eventually. Whether you either want to or like something happens and it forces you to, so. And it would probably be better for you to face that head on before it gets too deep or something like severe happens. And then, by that time it's just so much stuff that's built up. It makes it even harder to like work through and process those things.
Right.
Yeah. And let's see, Starla Ross says, what are some issues that come up in the barbershop if you can share? Are there just some like general topics? What are the common topics? And all three of y'all can answer this. Like, what are
Everything.
common topics that guys talk about? Because I think that a lot of women, we feel like y'all only care about certain things, and because maybe you don't express it to us. So, what are some of those issues that may come up? Just general topics.
That's
I haven't been to a barbershop in almost 70 years, so I am not the one to answer this.
I mean, I talk to my barber about everything, so he'd help me through stuff that I ain't told my mama. Like, I was like, "Hey man, what you think about this? Hey man, I'm going through this." And my barber actually, he's like he's a pastor, and so he'd tell me stuff, and then it's like an hour and a half into my haircut session, my hair ain't even cut. He's sitting there preaching, and then the whole barbershop listening to everything he told all my business. So, like I said, all that stuff is sacred. Like, you talk about anything, it's more sacred of a relationship than people think. So, that's
Right.
that's how it is in my life. So
To piggyback off Josh, like I say, some of the issues that come up in the barbershop are real deep issues concerning, family, finances, relationship. Many people confide in their barber and they won't necessarily tell anyone else because they trust their barber. Because you have to trust your barber if they're going to put a razor blade up under your neck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like literally, the customer, they put themselves in a vulnerable predicament physically.
Mm-hmm.
So if they trust you enough to put a razor blade to their face, they trust enough to confide and provide in-depth things that matters to them most. And I tell every single last one of my customers, my clients, whomever, whatever you tell me, it stays with me.
Mm-hmm.
and and that's how we build those relationships and that rapport. It's more just a haircut, it's a relationship. um and I have a few customers, they look forward to coming for their appointment just so they can talk about and discuss the things that has went on in the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. They want my opinion or what do you suggest that I do?
Mm-hmm.
And I just tell them, hey, just go with your heart and pray.
Right. And so, like, with that, like, it's fortunate that if anybody that comes to you to get their haircut, like, you are licensed, and so you have like the resources and the knowledge to help them. So, what do you think would be best for any barbers that are out there that may be listening that aren't licensed professional counselors or social workers? How could you say like they can set boundaries in their profession, like still help, but also set boundaries and like put them in the right direction on how to get help? And also, like, with you, like, how do you set boundaries in your life to protect your mental health? And you guys all can answer that one as well.
Okay, I'll go ahead and jump in. How do I protect my mental health? I've learned to limit your people and the world access to you. Uh, I even came to a point where I limit my amount of social media on my phone. I have a time limit. Once I reach that 60-minute time limit for the day, that's it. And and also in the evening time, shut that phone off. Have some me time. Shut it down because it's the world. You can I remember Barack Obama said a long time ago, I didn't believe it. In 2008, he said everyone will be walking around with a computer in their hand, literally. And here it is in our hand. So just cut the access off, shut it down sometimes.
Steven?
Yeah, I was ready to hop in there. I won't say I wish I could do less of this, right? Because I can. I can very easily do less of that. But because my job is so intrinsically tied to being like on social media all the time, being in people's spaces all the time, I think I have to have the me that is like active and with people, and then the me that is separate of that, right? And it's almost like funny, right? People say you have like your internet persona and then like your personal persona. And in the last few years, I feel like those two things have fused a lot because they are me, right? But the issue therein lied was that I was at a point, not even 2 years ago, where I'd be getting home at work at 6, and then I'd have as many as phone conversations as 5 and 6 people wanting to like emotionally dump on me until 2 and 3 a.m. in the morning. And I did not have very good boundaries. So much so to where I was like having a mental breakdown, and I was like, I got to get a therapist. And I did, right? But I feel like setting boundaries for me to protect my mental health had to understand and realize that people's love for me did not equate to their access to me, right? And sometimes it's hard to reconcile those things, especially for me. I'm like the kind of person where I'm like, if someone needs me, that equates to how much they love me. So if they need me to be around, they need my help, then like, and I'm being helpful to them, I'm useful to them, then obviously like I am doing great. But I had to learn how to separate that from myself and say, okay, well, love is limitless and boundless. And if these people love me, they'll understand when I get done at work at 6 o'clock, I'm not gonna host 5 and 6 therapy sessions. And I'm gonna tell everybody I'm going to the gym, I'm eating dinner, I'm watching crappy reality TV, and then I'm going to sleep. I'm not gonna talk to anybody for 2 and 3 hours about whatever they have going on in their life. You can catch me, 10, 11 a.m. tomorrow for 30 minutes. That's all you got. You have 24 hours with me to complain about something. And then like in that next 24, we better be finding solutions. So I think it's had a lot to do with allowing myself to be more firm with my relationships and asking for what I need to be healthy rather than hoping people give me permission to have firm boundaries. And that's hard, right? It's hard to do with your family. It's hard to do with your friends. It's hard to do with your employer, right? The people who write your check. But you have to have those boundaries and establish them before long, or you'll just be sick all the time. And I had to really get there personally to be healthier. So I think being forthright and asking people, telling them what I need so that we have better relationships, that's really helped me a lot.
Thank you for that.
Josh? The main thing that I do like to set boundaries, like you said, I limit my social media usage. I don't know what it is about social media that like triggers me or triggers the youth, or just people in general. People seem to be more depressed because a lot of people just post their highest moments on the internet, and then like people like compare their lives to other people's lives and things like that. Well, I'm not doing nothing, or I'm not doing this. And, I just read a study about social media and depression and anxiety and stuff. And then I started limiting my usage. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that I do it all the time, but if I'm stressed out or going through something, I know that maybe me getting on social media or watch the news and seeing these things are not the best, like the negative energy I may see, or, my mom always says that I'm everybody's everything. Like a lot of my friends and family, and especially my sisters. I got 6 sisters. Like if it's anything they need a light bulb screwed in, I'm worried about it. I'm like, oh man, so and so need this and so need that, and then I'm freaking out. worrying about how can I fix their problems, and they sitting up, feet up, watching TV, doing what they doing, not worrying about it. So I just try to protect my energy the best that I can, and like I say, just if I can immediately help with it or do what I can do it. But if it's gonna be long drawn, stress me out, cause me to go off of the track that I'm on to be more positive in my life, then I just kind of have to put it to the side so that I can, like I say, get more of a footnote who I want to be and where I'm going. So
thank you all for this so much. Like, boundaries are so important, and I think that is one thing that I have definitely tried to implement for myself since I started getting into entrepreneurship. I already had to develop boundaries when I was working um, for other people, but then especially when all you are relying on is yourself, you definitely have to have another layer of boundaries intact, not only for other people but for yourself, so you don't overwork yourself. And I've even tried, have been working with my husband over the last several years with helping him to navigate setting boundaries for himself as it comes to work, because he loves to work, and it's just hard for him to sit down sometimes. He plays at 2 churches, and he has his own company too. So, and he's always running around and doing things, and he's always supporting people. That's the most supportive man ever. He's like, I'm like, you don't have to go to so-and-so's birthday party. And he's like, well, you want people to support you, so you have to support them. And he's so genuine, and he really wants to support people in their endeavors. But, you do have to have those boundaries. And so that's something I think that you constantly have to work on. So this is going to be our last question because it's 9:00 and I value you guys' time, but I'm really loving this conversation. I wish we could continue to talk. There's been a lot of people that have asked about what are some ways that unlicensed people can help support men who may be afraid to seek counseling. And that actually was it alluded to my last question that I had sent you guys. So I'm going to put that on here. What are some ways that women, family, friends, coworkers, employers, your barber, whoever, how can they help support you and other men in their mental health journey so that they do get the help that they need?
I would say, especially with May being Mental Health Awareness Month, I would just encourage others to seek treatment, to read upon and get get educated about type of treatment, and and just refer and just encourage others. And if they're going through something, just tell them, hey, talk therapy is good for you, man, or or like I say, man, or whomever, talk therapy is good. Just like in the evening time when you sit down and come home and retire, to whomever, whether it's your spouse, your friend, your whoever your partner is, or your pet. When you retire for the evening, you want to sit back and reflect and talk, and that means a lot to me when I'm able to do that in the evening time in my own domain. So it's important for others to do it if they need professional help.
And I'll try to keep mine relatively short, but I think also really relatively low-hanging fruit is to even be conscious about the language you use with the people you're in relationship with, right? Even with my nephews, I make it a purpose I make it a habit to ask things like, how are you feeling? What was your favorite part of today? What didn't you like about today, right? It may seem kind of, childish or maybe immature to some people, but it's those basic things, right, that you start inserting into your language that gives people cues that it's okay to talk about their emotions, and especially the bad ones, right? I think we spend so much time thriving and rolling around and getting dirty with toxic positivity that we always have to be happy, right? Especially our leaders in our community. we should be making space for those people, especially to express when they're unhappy. So I really think that it's as simple as like, how was your day at work? Oh, that thing really sucked. Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, that sounds like it sucks. Let's talk about it. Oh, wow. I happen to have your favorite snack here. Sometimes like even like luring people in with food and just going beyond your own comfort, because I realize that sometimes it's also about like our own discomfort with navigating our own emotions that stops us from talking to other people about theirs. But there's nothing scary about that vulnerability, and there's nothing scary about holding space for other people's vulnerabilities. Because sometimes what happens is when you just ask that extra question beyond, how's your day at work? Oh, good, great. All right, see you later. That you uncover so much more about people. And, you might be sitting down at the table having a deeper conversation than what you expected. But it's really important for us all to understand that extending that help to others, whether or not it's returned to you, really does help, people grow by bounds and leaps. And I've seen it help my friends, just trying to give them space to navigate that sort of thing. So language, definitely intentional language.
Thank you.
Right. So to go off of that, that's what I was going to say. Like, I guess the number one thing for me as far as friends, families, and like, patients, people I take care of and stuff is your language. You never want to make somebody, if somebody's trust you enough to come to you and say, hey, this is what I'm going through, even if they say you the most outlandish, reckless thing, you never want to make them feel like persecuted. I never talk to somebody and say, well, why did you do that? I never do that. I'm like, well, what made that, why did that happen? You just want to be very careful with how you speak, because you never know what's going to set somebody off or what's going to push them to that limit to harm themselves or harm other people, or, take whatever negative route or avenue that they go down. And I always ask people, when they come to me, I say, I used to think it was awkward at first, but I always ask people, do you want feedback or do you want me to listen? Because some people just want to tell you what's going on, and you may not necessarily, you can say, okay, or, small conversation. When you tell somebody feedback, it's more personal, and it's more, I don't want to say confrontational, but, you'll put more of your values and views into something, and it can send somebody negatively, or they can feel like, well, this is the only person that I trust or can talk to, and then they told me what I was thinking was crazy or this or whatever, and then they go down some dark avenue, so.
Thank you guys so much for all of I think those were all great answers. So definitely like giving people that space, like showing interest, right? Because I think a lot of times we will feel like we have to say that everything is all good and everything is fine, because we feel like maybe people won't really care to hear about the bad day that we have. Or like a lot of people in the comments were talking about how like growing up, they were told like you shouldn't cry. And and probably in almost all Black households, we have heard, what you crying for? Like, or what you mad for? Like we are never allowed, like especially like Black children and Black boys are never allowed to have any other emotion other than anger. And then we make them, they get in trouble when they that's the only emotion that they show. But when they cry, then we say, man up, stop acting like a girl, all those things. And so like that's why language is so important, and we have to start young. And I'm so glad, Stephen, that like you mentioned with your nephews, like we all, even if you don't have children, like whether you have children, if you have nephews, the neighbors' kids, or whoever that you come in contact with, like just asking them, like those different, like the way you ask, even because most people are inclined to say, how was your day? It was good. Like switching it up on them, that might shock them a little bit, and then they like have to answer. Like I do that with my kids. I'm like, so what was your favorite part about today? Did somebody say something that made you mad today? And that kind of throws them off and gets them out of that, oh, I'm good, it was good, because I know that there were probably some good parts and there were probably some parts that irritated you, or maybe you were embarrassed, or, like kind of opening up the door for them to acknowledge, like, yeah, well, you know what, I did feel kind of embarrassed today when so-and-so, call my name out in front of the class, so like definitely the language and just creating that safe space. I even talk to like my women that are like going through issues in their relationship, like even your body language as well. Like men don't like the face-to-face like confrontation, like maybe positioning yourself side by side, or doing some sort of activity together that doesn't make it so like boom, like in your face, like we're gonna talk about this right now. Like that's gonna make somebody shut down and feel like attacked. So I think that those are all really, really great tips. And of course, there's many. I think a lot of people, I get that question a lot, like, what can I do to help this person? The biggest thing that you can do, besides just being a listening ear, and of course, we have to have boundaries. And when something is too much and people just kind of dump their problems on you, you do need to just say, hey, like, I appreciate that you trust me with this information. And I also feel like you probably need to see a professional to help you further, because I can only take you so far, right? Like, I even tell, like, even in marriage, like, I can't dump all of my stuff on my husband just because he's my husband. Like, that's not fair. And he can't dump everything on me either. So we have to be mindful of that and have that balance as well. So thank you guys so much for coming on. I really enjoyed this discussion. So this is the season finale of the Counselors Complex podcast, but I will be back in the fall. So please like, subscribe, share, and hopefully I can have you guys back on again, because I really enjoyed this conversation.
No, thank you so much for having all of us on, and I really do hope I can come back for other conversations. Thank you.
Yes. So I'm gonna let all of you kind of let us know where the people can find you for whatever your niche is, or your business, or even with music. Like, let the people know where they can find you. So James, can you tell them where they can find you and how they can schedule appointments with you?
Well, yes, you can find me on and my wife. We have a private practice, and it's called Patchwork Services. My wife provides the educational component. She's an education consultant, and with me, I provide the consulting, the supervision, and the therapy. But you can find us on Facebook. We have our own Facebook page, Patchwork Services, and just word of mouth. I really have not rolled anything out simply because I don't want too much volume and just too much volume at this time. So we do word of mouth and just Facebook.
Okay.
Right. No web page, nothing like that. Just trying to work on getting some things together and get the infrastructure in before we open it all the way up.
Okay, well, let me know, because I'm going to refer some people to you whenever you just let me know.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. Josh, how can people reach you and learn more about your music and everything else?
Okay, nobody can ever spell my name, okay? But so like all my music is on like Apple Music, all that. It's called My Name is Mentation Speaks, like your mental status or whatever like that. All I do is talk about like self-actualization and just empowerment, real, like I say, real transparent in my music. You can find me, you can enter that on anything that you want, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. That's where all my stuff is at. So
can you post that in the chat so people can know? Like, post those links in the chat for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and Stephen, how can people reach you?
Yes, there are a couple of ways you can reach me. And before I do that, if anybody's looking for any sort of like ice-breaking, relationship building stuff, not sponsored at all, but I definitely recommend this game called The And. They have it for friends, family, relationships, coworkers. Lots of really great questions. So definitely look at this. I love games like this because it makes people ask deeper questions and certainly look at how they can get closer. But I'm on like 3, 4, 5 different things, right? First, if you're looking for any creative services for your businesses or artists, right? I do copywriting, I do PR, I do event planning. I also do graphic design and social media management. So a lot of stuff there, right? But I really believe a lot in helping businesses really find their unique voices. And a lot of people don't like talking about themselves. They want other people to do it. No one wants to talk about the cool stuff that they do. So I take on that work, and you can just do exactly whatever you want to do. Again, that is Nightlife on Facebook and Instagram. It's my last name, Knight, Life, one word, Life standard spelling. And of course, if you want to email me, that is StephenKnightBiz@gmail.com. Also, you can follow all the work I do at Shreve Pride at Shreve Pride, SHREVEPRIDE on Facebook and Instagram. We're also at shrevepride.com. We do a lot of LGBTQ ally aligned programming in the area of Shreveport and North Louisiana. We have Field Day coming up, which is an adult field day, Q Prom, which is an adult prom on June 25th. And then we have Quest, which is a music and arts festival happening October 29th. So come out to that. And finally, I'm almost done. I'm the president of PACE, which is a nonpartisan, queer and ally aligned advocacy group here in Shreveport, Louisiana. But we represent all of North Louisiana, right? As well as having PACE, which is a youth group for high school and college students who need social support, right? So we service a lot of students. We work very intently with other community leaders to provide support for not just students, but teachers and stuff like that too, parents. There's so much in that. And if you're just looking for a group of like-minded people who just want the world to be a better place, we've been working a lot with everything going on at the state legislature and just in general creating programming in the community. You can find us on Facebook at PACE, PACE, Louisiana. And our website is pacelouisiana.org. If you'd like to become a member, if you know somebody who needs that kind of support or just wants to be a part of a cool advocacy group, I am happy to connect you all. And please do not hesitate to reach out to me, straight, gay, or whatever. There's a space for you in building a bigger, better community.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I will see you in the fall at the Counselors Complex podcast. Good night.